Most likely.
Good morning and welcome all to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Erie's online version of Sunday services. My name is Kristina Church and I have the pleasure and the privilege of serving this wonderful congregation as its minister. It's the tradition of this congregation to call all of us to services with a bell. And while we are social distancing and need to be at home, we do that by ringing a bell together. So if you have a bell or something that you can make noise with, I invite you now to unmute yourself. And with the sound of these bells, we welcome stranger and friend to a time of mindfulness. You can ring your bell now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And to finish the welcome, we like to sing Hal Walker's welcoming song, Whoever You Are, we welcome you. And today Becca will be performing this song for us.
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Thank you, James and Becca, for that lovely rendition. Whoever you are, we do welcome you, whether you've been here hundreds of times or whether this is your first time. We're so glad you're with us this morning. Our opening words are from our Unitarian forebearer, Henry David Thoreau. Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant? Now, James will perform the Domenico Gabrieli's sixth prelude for us. We light our chalice, a symbol of our faith, each Sunday morning. And I invite you to light a chalice if you have one, or a candle, as we say the words that are on your screen. We light this chalice symbol of our faith alive in this world, naming our vision of collective liberation and daring to remember each other into beloved community. And we are also celebrating imperfection this month of February, and I am demonstrating that quality by my inability to light the chalice this morning, but that's all right. It's all good. I need a little help. Clap your hands if you believe in chalices. Oh, it worked. Thank you. Such is the power of your faith. Each Sunday, we also recite the Universal Covenant. Would anyone like to lead the Universal Covenant today?
Sure.
Hi, Mike. Great, thank you.
We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Whoops, and I just lost what happened to our screen. We care for the earth and for each other.
Thank you. This congregation also has a bond of union unique to the congregation, which was adopted in 1898 and has been used continuously since then. So I invite you to say the words on your screen along with me. We unite ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion, as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, believing that we may thereby prove helpful one to another and promote the cause of truth, righteousness, and love in the world. May it be so. Well, now is the time for all ages, and you may have been a little bit intrigued with my title of the service today, which was Of Bechdel and the Bible. You may have wondered who the heck Bechdel was and why I was using Bechdel's name in connection with the Bible. What do these two things have to do with each other? Well, Alison Bechdel is an American cartoonist, and she became famous not only for her cartoons, but because she came up with a test for stories, particularly for movies. This had to do with Hollywood. But you may have noticed, if you've done a lot of reading, especially if you've done readings of adventure stories, that there are lots and lots of adventure stories about boys and the things that boys do, and lots of movies about men and men's lives and superheroes that are men, and not as many movies about women or people who are non-binary, people who don't identify as men. And so Alison Bechdel came up with a test. And she said that a movie or a story could pass her test if it qualified in 3 ways. And the 3 ways are on your screen. That there had to be more than one woman in a story. Not just the main character's girlfriend or the main character's mom. And that the 2 women had to talk to each other in the story, and that they should be talking about something other than a man, like their boyfriend or their husband or their husband's career. So that's the Bechdel test. And you might be able to come up with some other things. Like one of the things I've noticed, I'm going to be talking later about characters in the Bible. And one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the women characters in the Bible are not named. Some of them are, but a lot of them are just the woman at the well, or the Canaanite woman, or other names that just identify them as a woman, but they don't get names. So that's interesting. I would say that it would be nice if the female characters and the non-binary characters in stories got to have names. And you might be able to think of some other things that would be important too. But as you read and as you look at comic books and movies, think about the Bechdel test and think about why some stories get told and other stories don't get told. And think about whose perspective the story is told from. That's a big word, but it means whose eyes are we seeing the story through? Those are all important things to think about. And I hope that we get to see more movies about women and non-binary heroes and characters and superheroes as time goes on, and that more and more of our stories will pass the Bechdel test. All right. Now it's time to make a practice of generosity. This congregation exists through the care, the love, and the contributions of those who support it. You can make a donation to our congregation in a number of ways. You could write a check payable to UUCE and mail it to the address that you see on your screen. Or you can also go to uuerie.org/donate. If the payment is towards your pledge, please do let us know so you can get credit for that. And James will continue to play more parts of the lovely Sixth Prelude by Domenico Gabrieli. Thank you for your generosity. All blessings on each gift and each giver. You know, I would have been really happy to get all the way through seminary without ever having to take a course on the Bible. As some of you know, I grew up a nun. That's N-O-N-E, not N-U-N, meaning that my family did not subscribe to any formal religion, though I come from a Judeo-Christian background with both Jewish and Christian roots. But the Bible and the wisdom found within the Bible is part of the history of our faith, which began as a couple of very liberal Christian denominations. And even at UU Seminary, we are required to cover this important religious text. And eventually I had to take biblical narratives. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I found it was one of my favorite classes during seminary. We weren't really studying Christianity. We were studying the historical context of the Jesus movement. And my understanding and appreciation for this political and economic uprising by a colonized people, the Jews, grew as we studied the text and learned about its context. And for my project, I was drawn to the story of the Syrophoenician woman, as she's known in the Gospel of Mark, or the Canaanite woman, as she's called in Matthew, for a number of reasons. First of all, I think she would pass the Bechdel test. And even though she wasn't named, she was a strong female character, a character who had an encounter with Jesus and changed him in a way. And I want to tell you that story today as we celebrate the gifts of imperfection. You see, when the story begins, Jesus is a healer and a preacher, and he's been gaining some fame by healing people all over the land. And he simply wants to be left alone now to rest and recuperate from the unceasing demands of ministry. He's tired and he's hiding out from the crowds that beseech him for help everywhere he goes. Like any burned out healer, he's been burning the candle at both ends and he just needs some downtime. He's not in a great place. He's recently received word that John the Baptist has been brutally killed for speaking truth to power in a foreshadowing of his own violent end to come. Now, Jesus is basically hiding out in a place called Tyre, laying low and trying to take a break from his public ministry. He actually tells everyone not to let people know he's there, but even then, he's not allowed any time to rest because the Syrophoenician woman somehow finds out that Jesus, this healer who's developing a reputation for casting out demons, he's in the area and staying at this one particular house. And she has one intention. Her intention is very clear. She's laser beam focused on getting her daughter the care that she needs. Now, we don't know much about the Syrophoenician woman, but her love for her daughter comes through at every moment of this short vignette. It's easy for us to picture a woman like this, a mother who will move heaven and earth to help her child. We know her. We've experienced her. Maybe some of us have even been her at times. What would it take for a Canaanite woman to seek out someone like Jesus and ask for his help? Well, she was probably pretty desperate. Perhaps she'd been stigmatized by her neighbors or some community members for having a daughter who was afflicted by a demon. Was this affliction of her daughter's what we would now call a mental illness? It's hard to know. But knowing how we human beings tend to blame the victim in situations such as this, it's possible that she was being socially shunned or persecuted. At any rate, she was willing to try anything that might work for her daughter. What would be a parallel situation in our world today? We know that she was from a culturally and linguistically Greek background, and she clearly followed a different religion than Jesus's Judaism. The area northwest of Galilee where she lived was a wealthy, multicultural region where most inhabitants were pagan and had adapted to the prevailing Greek cultural traditions. Now, much literature has claimed this woman as a disadvantaged person in a one-down position towards Jesus. And it's true that her gender, female, would render her a less than in terms of personal power and prestige. Yet, the Syrophoenician woman was on her own home turf, whereas Jesus was not. He was the foreigner. She was from the dominant culture, whereas he was from a reviled, occupied group that was routinely othered and persecuted by the Romans. She may have been a single mother, as many scholars have concluded from the fact that she was out by herself in public, seeking his aid. But we really don't know for certain what her marital or family status might have been. We have no idea of her age or her educational background, or her socioeconomic class, or even her name. We don't know her name. But in order to make her more human, to give her an identity that begins to do her justice, I am going to give her a name just for today. I am going to call her Syra. By giving her a name, we're humanizing her in a small way. I picture Syra in a modern parallel as someone from a wealthy suburban enclave, perhaps a woman from a gated community in Florida, going to a gullah healer for help out of desperation, or maybe a woman in Arizona finding a Diné healer and imploring him for his assistance. Or possibly a wealthy Texan woman begging for curanderismo from a Santeria practitioner in her area. In these analogies, the cultural, the gender, and the class identities swirl around the encounter and behave like shifting sands in the desert. So perhaps they are well matched in terms of wit, personal power, and yet each is in some way the other and subject to stereotypes and biases. So in the Gospel of Matthew, Syra is not just calling Jesus's name, calling for justice and freedom and healing from this demon. She's wailing and screaming loudly in the street. She makes a scene so boldly that they cannot just ignore her. She's outside the house screaming for assistance. And Jesus tries at first to just not pay attention, but eventually the other disciples in the house can't take it anymore, and they ask him to get rid of her. I imagine him sighing heavily and thinking to himself, why can't they just tell her to move along? I have to do everything around here. So he goes out to talk to her. He's polite, but cold. Go away, he seems to say. I'm not here for you. I'm only here for the children of the house of Israel. He opens with a brutal metaphor. He keeps trying to tell her that she isn't welcome here, isn't allowed at this particular table. He's a little softer in Mark, where he tells her that the children need to be fed first, because it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. The implication here is that she must wait her turn, wait until all the children of Israel, the Jews, are healed. And then, if he has any energy left over, he might turn his attention to her daughter. In Matthew, he doesn't even hold out that small hope to her, saying only that it wouldn't be right to throw the children's food to the dogs. In any case, his message is this: go away, lady. There isn't any food here for you. And there's no getting around the fact. He calls her a dog. Now, this has been a hugely problematic moment in the New Testament for many Christians. If Jesus is perfect, if Jesus is divine, if his ministry is for all people, why does he treat Syra this way? Why does he tell her that she isn't welcome at the table? Why is he so callous? Why doesn't he see her pain and respond as we expect him to do, with perfect love and compassion? There have been many efforts to minimize and write away this scene in the Christian Bible. Scholars have suggested that Jesus is just testing the woman's faith, waiting to see how she responds to his indifference. But he really plans to help her all along. And yet there's no indication of that in the text. And the fact that Jesus calls her a dog, well, as a way of minimizing that act of rudeness, the Greek word for dog has been nuanced by some apologists into the word puppy or little dog, which has a softer sound to it. But the truth is that dog was a common slur that Jews used to describe Gentiles. Dogs were reviled creatures in the Jewish culture, unclean and unwelcome. They ate disgusting food and were not allowed anywhere near a Jewish home. So this is where things get really interesting. Our heroine, Syra, responds to Jesus, still humble, still respectful and appropriate, still addressing him as Sir and Lord. She answers him, but like a jester speaking truth to a king, extending his metaphor, but twisting it around to mean something completely different and new. Yes, she says, but even the dogs can eat the crumbs that fall from the table. Her brilliant response comes from a different cultural location. You see, in Syra's culture, dogs are considered to be beloved pets and are allowed to sit under the table during meals, eating whatever the family throws off. Far from being considered unclean, they would actually help to keep the floor tidy by snarfing up whatever bits of food happened to land in their vicinity. So they performed a valuable service, as well as giving love and companionship. We can all relate to this lovable, friendly, helpful image of the dog, for it's the way most of us relate to dogs today. So Syra, even after being warned and asked to leave, well, nevertheless, she persists. She clearly wins the argument by being smart, respectful, and culturally competent. She achieves her objective of healing for her daughter, and she teaches Jesus something about himself as well. Have you ever had an encounter like this? Have you ever written someone off, only to discover that that person is so much more than you ever gave them credit for? What happened after that? Did you open up to new learning? Did you take in the lesson that was being offered to you? Did you learn to see others in a new way? Well, obviously, the lives of the Syrophoenician woman and her daughter were profoundly impacted by crossing paths with Jesus. But clearly, Jesus too has been changed by this brief encounter. He can't unsee what he has seen. The Syrophoenician woman is a fellow human being with needs, vulnerabilities, fears, desires, and her own interesting point of view. And so he does something interesting as well. He thanks her in his way, or at least acknowledges her, by giving her what she has requested. For saying that, he tells her, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. For saying that, for answering me in kind, for coming up with that clever reply, for reminding me of your humanity, for calling me to a more inclusive ministry. It's not really clear what Jesus means here, but what is clear is that he genuinely appreciates her wordplay and her persistence. It's true that in Matthew, he responds in a rather different tone, one of greater distance and judgment. Woman, great is your faith, he says. Let it be done as you wish. The narrator finishes the tale, telling us she went home and found her daughter lying on a bed, completely healed, with the demon gone. And so, what does all of this mean for us today? Why does it really matter? Why is the Syrophoenician woman such an important passage in the Bible? Well, it's one of the only times we see Jesus changing his mind about something or being persuaded by someone else. And so, if Jesus is a human being who can grow and change and be transformed by his encounters with other people, that means that the teacher is also the student. This means that we are all potential teachers, all potential healers, all potential saviors of one another. This theology of mutuality, as we might call it, this ethic of growth and change, can replace a theology of static perfection, a theology of imperfection. Growth, change, and transformation can free us all from hierarchical structures in which only the powerful give lessons, and everyone else, less fortunate, must receive and absorb them gratefully, attempting to emulate a non-human standard of perfection that we'll never be able to achieve. A new theology of imperfection and growth claims that each of us has something to teach and each of us has something to learn. And our ability to grow could depend on the cultivation of skills of listening, empathy, and creative communication with all of the humans that we come into contact with every single day. Now we can use this powerful example as well to counter other narratives about the place of women and non-binary people within a Christian context. We can demonstrate that Jesus appreciated and rewarded women's agency and ingenuity, and that he considered women to be important leaders and healers within his movement. If Jesus had to learn to overcome his cultural conditioning in order to stop stereotyping others or putting them in boxes, well, then maybe there's hope for us too. Maybe the next time that we find we've been unable to see someone in their wholeness, we can remember Jesus's example of grace and acceptance when life presents him with a new lesson. Maybe instead of becoming defensive or angry, we can listen to another person's point of view. We can really try to see that person in their full humanity, no matter what kind of cultural baggage we're dragging behind us. If Jesus was able to move beyond his initial ministry to a narrowly defined select group of people within his own religious sect, people who were a lot like him, people from the same cultural, linguistic, geographic, and religious heritage as him, if Jesus, despite his fatigue, his burnout, and despite the real dangers he faced, if he could contemplate expanding his capacity to love and to heal in outward circles of care and concern for the whole world, well, then maybe we can expand our hearts a little too. We too can care about other people's children who are suffering someplace far away. So maybe we can begin to look around and see the Syrophoenicians who are all around us, everywhere in our modern world. Those that we've dismissed by some variety of other. Maybe they're richer than we are, and we dislike them for that. Or maybe we disapprove of their politics. Or maybe they watch the wrong TV channels and listen to the wrong kind of music. Maybe they shop at stores we wouldn't ever set foot in. Or maybe their eating habits disgust us. Maybe we think the clothes they wear are tacky, or they use spices we think are smelly, or they adorn their bodies in ways that are unfamiliar and alien to us. Or maybe they follow some kind of religion that doesn't make any sense to us. Maybe their love life seems strange and frightening to us. Maybe we can't understand their pronouns. Or maybe we think that they won't understand ours. Maybe they've made poor choices and we think they deserve what they got. Or maybe that's what we're afraid that they're thinking about us. Maybe they seem to have such different values that we can't find any common ground at all. Or maybe they live so far away that their lives don't even seem real. No matter who they are, those others that we think we know so well, those folks that we write off as lunatics, as fools, as deplorables, haves or have-nots. The story of the Syrophoenician woman would ask us all to stop and take stock of who we've written out of our circle of concern. You see, they are calling to us, our siblings, in this shared humanity. And even if all they're asking for is a few scattered crumbs, we know in our hearts that they deserve a real place at the table. We know that there are no others, only siblings in our human family whom we haven't yet learned to love. As we move into a practice of learning to love, we will share our joys and concerns with one another today. And the way we do that is by sharing a joy, a concern, a sorrow, whatever's on your heart in the chat. And then after that, we'll take a moment of silence during which we'll acknowledge all of those joys and concerns.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, someone's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Someone's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Someone's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Someone's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like justice. Someone's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Someone's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Someone's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
This morning, in the joys and concerns, I saw expressions of hopefulness at the coming of spring and perhaps a renewed response to COVID that is a little more organized. some folks that are having health concerns and recovering from various things. Appreciation particularly for James's music and for this loving community and these Sunday services. For all these, oh, and I almost forgot, and some upcoming nuptials as well. For all these joys and all these concerns and sorrows that you shared, and all those that remain in the silence of our hearts, too tender to share, know that we are with you. We send our love and support. The closing words for our service today are from Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. Hush. Somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten, to a future not quite fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling our name. What shall we do? And I invite you now to extinguish your chalice along with me and say these words if you would like. These beloved words from Reverend Elizabeth Sella Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, James and Rebecca, for the beautiful music. Thanks to all, Clyde, Christine, Annette, and all those who helped, excuse me, who helped with our service today. You can find this service and others on the YouTube page. So please take a look and join us next week for Love, Perfect and Otherwise on February 14th. With Regis.